Hey y'all, I've been hearing a lot about the fact that minions, for some reason, just feel weaker. And in fact, I did some like very cursory testing, and there just was absolutely no change. People almost certainly were just kind of experiencing some misunderstanding of like the interactions between what they were expecting and what was happening. Additive damage was working, masteries was working. People were testing aspects were working. The cult leader paragon nodes, glyphs, everything was working. Minions damage is absolutely not changed in any way, shape, or form. They have the same base scaling, all the things still work for them. But here's the thing, you're not crazy. It's the Ring of Mendeln that's bugged. Basically, any of your aspects, and this is just the TLDR, you don't have to listen to the entirety of my ramble, but I have the data to back this up. I've been sitting here for hours testing it. I've been talking to a lot of the other people who are like predominantly either focused on Necromancer and minions to try to figure out what's going on. The Ring of Mendeln's damage proc, the thing that is 90+% of the damage that your build does, is not interacting with aspects which increase your minion's damage. Reanimation, Great Feast, I assume Unyielding Commander, none of these are working for Mendeln's damage. So while all the normal things are working for them, with the changes that have come in Season 7, this particular interaction has been borked. That's why you feel like you're doing that much less damage. That's why you feel like nothing's quite connecting or working properly. Now, I've already communicated this bug to the developers, and in fact, I even tried to just like immediately escalate it, because obviously an entire version of the Necromancer not working is kind of a big concern. But now, for the people who do like data sheets, who know me for data sheets, and they're here for those data sheets, let me go ahead and let you lay your eyes on this masterpiece of the amount of things that I've tested today. We tested a whole bunch today, ranging everywhere from whether or not damage was applying the way that it should, whether or not damage reduction on monsters was applying the way that it should, the way that intelligence, additive damage, multipliers of base damage were working. We even went and retested what the base scaling of each individual minion's attacks are, and all of that turned out right. Everything was working. You see here, we went through and we tested every single one of the minions. We took what their damage should be, take into account whatever modifiers that they should have, like the Skirmisher has plus 30% base damage, Shadow Mages with having up to 6 Shadow Mages in tow, gaining you an additional 18% damage. And every single time, the expected average of what our damage was and what our outcome was within the range of less than 2 or 3% difference. Tested it across a lot of different things, and we went through and I started adding additive damage to it. I started adding Cult Leader to it. I started adding glyphs to it. And again, all of it was working for your minions' base damage. And then I realized that there was one key to the puzzle, one thing that was still a bit of an outlier. It was whether or not Mendeln, which has been a near constant thorn in the sides of minion necromancers because it's simultaneously where all your damage comes from, and also one of the more nuanced and convoluted like systems in the game to understand what should apply to it. But in Season 7, it should work smooth like butter. Everything that applies to your minions should apply to Mendeln. Mendeln's based off your Necromancer. Everything that applies to your Necromancer applies to Mendeln. You spit out a huge damage number. So that's when we went through and recalculated everything that I just told you, but from the perspective of Mendeln, taking into account, again, our additive damage, our intelligence, additive damage for our minions. And this is where we started to see some discrepancies. So the first discrepancy right here was whether or not the Skirmishers plus 30% base damage. They just have a multiplier. If you were to ever go read their tooltip, the big thing about Skirmishers is that they do 30% more damage than your other warrior minions. And this was the first little hint that I got that something wasn't quite right. Skirmishers' damage multiplier wasn't applying to Mendeln. Now, I gotta be honest with you, I was near positive that Skirmishers never applied to Mendeln, and that was always kind of an issue, but we would expect it to work in this season. So I retested it with Defenders, and we got the exact damage number, again, within 2 to 3% difference here of what we were expecting. So the minions were applying Mendeln as they should, but this was our first hint here that something wasn't quite right. So then I went through and I started testing everything. I put 20% attack speed onto my character. I applied the Cult Leader node, which should grant them 40% bonus damage. And I saw that the expected Mendeln proc damage was within line of what it should be. Okay, cool. So Cult Leader works. That kind of makes sense, right? Damage scaler for your minion applies to Mendeln, which is supposed to read the damage scaler for your minions. Let's keep adding stuff on here. In this test, I still had Cult Leader on, I was still using Mendeln, and I added on 125 warrior additive damage. This should also apply, and when you do the math and you check the averages, it comes out in the wash there. This is also applying to Mendeln. Okay, good. What else do we have though? Next thing we tried was reanimation, an aspect which should, on my amulet, increase my minions damage by 65% as long as they've been alive for 10 seconds. Popped it on, respawned a new skeleton defender, waited 10 seconds, and then started taking down damage values, and you'll see that the average damage that we were getting was the exact same as our previous test, when it should be 65% higher. So, okay, cool. Reanimation doesn't work. What else can we test here? We took off reanimation. We added on warrior mastery. Warrior mastery should be a 45% increase in damage. Lo and behold, when my Mendeln average damage was calculated, it came out in the wash again. This is applying properly. So masteries apply, additive damage applies, intelligence applies. Things that directly scale your minions' damage from your Paragon apply. But what about other aspects? Well, another great example would be the Great Feast. Great Feast should add on 45% damage on a ring. Went ahead and tossed that on, resummoned my defender, and what do you see? You get the average damage outcome of a non-aspect enchanted damage range here. So Great Feast is also not applying. This is why I'm just going to go ahead and assume that things like Unyielding Commander also will not apply. I would not be surprised if Grasping Veins is still working though, because Grasping Veins actually increases your damage against the target, and Mendeln's damage procs as if the Necromancer applied it, and then just reads your minions. So Grasping Veins very well may still be working, but at least these two, which are basically like pound for pound 100% run on every single Necro build, just aren't. So what does this mean for you if you're currently playing minions? Well, hell, if you're not feeling any of this and you're not really complaining and you're just kind of enjoying your playthrough, keep going ahead and doing that. If you are just at the point where you're getting to having a Mendeln on your character, it's still going to be a massive increase in your overall damage. You're just not going to see the same returns from aspects scaling it as well as scaling any other damage that you would be doing. This is probably going to become an issue once you're up into like World Tier 2 or 3 or trying to push into the pit, where obviously you desperately need those scalers. If you're looking for a build to jump to, if you're playing a minion build and you're looking for something else to do, there are a couple different options here. One, you could try to focus more into the Golem using Fell Gluttony. Fell Gluttony scales off of you and not your Golem. So this should be properly reading everything else. I haven't gone and tested that just yet, but considering it's just the cost of swapping over an aspect, it might be worth your time. Obviously, there are a ton of super strong builds that are in the game right now. Most notably, Bloodwave Necromancer has a very small investment of gear to be able to go play it. You basically just need the 3 aspects: Title, Ultimate Shadow, and Fast Blood. You can even use one from the Codex of Power. You just have to go run a dungeon and put it on your amulet. And then once you could even find a non-ancestral pair of Kesami's Legacy. These are the new pants that drop off of Lord Zir, or even Indira's, which are another pair of pants that drop off of Lord Zir. They're going to both differently modify how your Bloodwave works, but that might be a jump off point just at least until they get minions fixed. Honestly, I'm sorry to have to report on something like this. I really feel like the Minion Necromancer has been the redheaded stepchild of the Necromancer class, and I feel like we're kind of continuously running into issues here. Now, obviously, there was a lot of testing that went into the PTR, but you can't cover every single thing, and it's really hard to kind of tie down what is happening at any given moment when so many variables are at play. So hopefully, this will lead to a more rigorous amount of testing, both on the parts of the developers, but also what our community tends to do during the PTR. This is not a we need to be responsible for it, but it's more so just giving me more inspiration to make sure that we're kind of going through and testing things at a base level, even when at this point we really shouldn't have to. If you have anything else you've come across, any other weird instances, any issues, bugs, go ahead and report them down in my comments. This is where a lot of the stuff tends to bubble up from, and then I tend to start seeing it across like Reddit. It'll pop up in my Discord, it'll be in my chat. Other creators and other community members in these same Discords will come across it as well. Make your voice heard. If you're coming across weird stuff, let's go ahead and get it tested so that we make sure that all of this gets back into the hands of the devs. If you're brand new here, subscribe to the channel. I hope that this helped you to better enjoy the season as it is right now. I can totally understand taking a break until it's fixed. Nobody's going to judge you. Enjoy the game if you can. If you can't, go ahead and put it down. You don't want to be frustrated. Thank you very much for watching this video. I truly, truly hope that it helps. I look forward to seeing you in the next one.